Hi.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
You're doing well. How's everybody here?
Good, thank you. So glad to have you here with us today. All right, let me
Yeah, my
find
pleasure.
Jessica.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. There are so many people signed up for this. Let me tell you, we've got like 300 people that are signed up to see
Oh,
us
great.
talk about this
Amazing.
today. So excited.
It's
Um,
it's uh it's a
I'm
lot of people
here,
interested in AI these days, so I'll try to get
right?
very tactical so we're not just talking about general AI and actually talking about the product.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm really excited to talk about today? And hi, Jessica. So glad to have you. I'm excited to talk about this from the perspective of the small practice, right?
Yep.
Like most of the people online here are either solos. Actually, tell us in the chat how many, how many, if you're a solo, put a one. If you have team members, put the total number, including yourselves, of people on your team. I would love to see that. I think it's helpful for us to just set the context because I know when we're talking to like big practices, there's often this like conversation around technology and they have budgets to invest and they have team to implement and it's just a different conversation, right? But today what I really want to focus on is the value of what Juno is doing to the small practice that is doing a great job already, right? Like they care about their clients, they are providing an excellent service, but they're feeling maxed out. Their brains are maxed out. It's hard to find team members that are reliable and that are skilled, that are not a bazillion dollars. And I want to talk about it from that lens today about how Juno can really augment the practice the small practice and help them to serve their clients, existing clients better and even create more capacity. And if you're burnt out and tapped out on time, how you can get some time back. Because I really think it's tools like Juno, it's tools like TaxDome that are going to help make that transformation. So we've got a lot of people here. We see a couple of 20s and teens, but most everyone is like seven or lower. So we're definitely talking to the small practice here. So thank you guys for sharing all that. So helpful. Um, I have a little thing that I wanted to share to kick us off. I want to talk about what our agenda is today, but I really want to set the stage for what we're doing today because, as I mentioned, it's for the small practice. So I want to have us do introductions in just a minute, but I want to help you all that are on the line with us understand what this context is. So most small practices, if you're in tax prep, you're probably toggling between documents, organizers, maybe last year's tax return, trying to piece all these things together physically, by hand, and with your eyeballs and brain. But what Juno is doing is it is helping you to not just fill in forms faster, but it's what you're going to be able to see shift in this new technology that's available to us. It is the shift in how tax work is actually getting done, as well as who is doing it. So, what I love about TaxDome is that it approaches every return through a trifecta lens. It's the preparer, the reviewer, and the advisor, and it's all built into this tool. So, Dave, I am so excited to have you talk about this. It automates the prep. It flags what needs to be reviewed. It's going to surface real advisory opportunities for your clients. And all of this is done without you having to compare PDFs side by side, having multiple screens up. You may even be able to get rid of one of those like five screens that you have on your wall. Like, wouldn't that be a blessing? And so what is coming soon too is an integration within TaxDome. Now, you know we love TaxDome here, and this is going to actually make this process get even smoother than what the amazing functionality of Juno does. It's going to be integrated right into your practice management software. And so soon you'll be able to upload your client documents with a click. Dave's going to give us a demo of this today. It's going to auto organize. It's going to tie out things into spreadsheets. It's going to do so much of the things you guys are doing manually or your team are doing manually. And so what does this mean? Because I don't want it to scare you and think like it's going to make my team not necessary. You may find that you don't have to fill roles that you maybe thought you needed, but it's going to allow your team to actually operate at the top of their pay grade. You're not going to be manually cross-checking everything anymore. There's not going to be paper pushing. It's going to allow them to work better. It's also going to allow you to deliver your clients a more complete and accurate return without extra hours or without extra hires. So I want you guys to be thinking through that lens as we talk today, because a lot of people, Dave, honestly, have been pushing back and saying, well, this is expensive. But we want to help you shift what you're thinking about this tool today, and I want to set it through that lens. So I would love, Dave, if you and Jessica both could give yourselves introductions, and I will then introduce myself and we'll get started. So, Dave, who are
Sure.
you? Tell us about Juno.
Yeah, appreciate that. Really good intro there and some good topics. And I think we can use this time to talk through those things. I'm a CPA, so first and foremost, I have been in public accounting since about 2015. I came in later in life. I ended up buying my mom's practice in San Francisco. And then I bought a couple other small practices and rolled them together. So actually, you were talking about small firms. I've run firms as small as three. That's how many people I have now. We were as large as 12 at one time. And just a quick tidbit on that, it wasn't just that we automated and then fired everybody. We just had a bunch of turnover. And like many of you probably, when COVID hit, we went remote. The Bay Area was shut down for a period of time. And then when we opened back up, our employees had all moved. And so we really spent a couple years, couple very painful years trying to figure out how to get the right people in to be able to do the work. I ended up firing like 40% of our clients because I just couldn't find the people. And that kind of set me off on a path to start Juno. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but that's my quick background. I founded Juno a couple of years ago, and even though we rebranded in June, so like it's funny. People sometimes be like, "I haven't. You look. This looks great. I just haven't heard anything about you until like the last 60 days or whatever." And so we rebranded in June. We were True Prep before that, and then everyone started calling us Sure Prep, and then we just announced the TaxDome partnership last month, and so we've kind of like are relatively new to the scene, but we've been working on this for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, what I love about that story is that you solved the problem you had. And I think most good things come out of the solution from a problem you had. So I'm excited to show everyone what this can do today. Now, Jess, hello. Jessica is our co-founder of Workflows for Tax Pros. Jess, can you give everyone just a little bit of about your background in case they don't know you? Most people probably do here in this community, but always a good thing to do.
Good morning, everyone. So I am an enrolled agent currently based out of the Boise, Idaho-ish area. I started my career back in 2009 doing bookkeeping and very simple tax prep, became a licensed EA in 2014 and was lucky enough to land a position at a really wonderful high volume tax representation like law firm. So a lot of my background and experience is resolving taxpayer problems, which I think has given me a um, very unique kind of approach to how I run my practice today, because I'm so used to seeing the really, really bad stuff happen in the industry and just how difficult it can be to overcome, a problem once it exists. And I officially started my own practice in early 2020 after a really just like bad experience at a law firm that pushed me. It was COVID, I was pregnant, and it just the opportunity presented itself. I took it, and kind of here where I am now, and how most of you guys know me.
Well, you are a star in the small practice groups because you are talking about these important things. So I think that, the partnership between TaxDome, Juno, and Workflows is such a magical one. And I'm excited to talk more about your experience in using Juno these last few months and what you're seeing as opportunity in the next couple minutes. Dave, let's start with you. I would love to hear what your premise with how you like what Juno does. Like, how does it work? Because I talked about that trifecta, and I think that's such an important piece of this puzzle of the value that Juno brings. So, can you just tell us a little bit about the tool and then maybe give us a demo if you can
Yeah.
show us how it works and the magic it does produce?
Yep, happy to do that. Bear with me here for just a minute. Let me just pull this up. Can you guys see this okay?
Yes, thank you.
So we built this to be honest, like I looked at SurePrep as a practice, was my initial like genesis of, okay, hold on, there needs to be something, different here. And it was like $30,000 for my small practice. And I was like, wow, that's insane. Um, and then I looked at the product and I thought like this is pretty hard to use. Like I'm gonna have to train my staff on like a different style of tax binder or work paper. People use different. If we could just get a poll and pick one term and then go with that forever, that'd be super helpful for me in my demos and everything else. But people call it different things. But the notes that you take along with the tax return, and that depends obviously on the size of the practice as well. But I looked at SurePrep and I thought like, Wow, this just sold for a ton of money. It sold in 2022 for like $500 million from Thomson Reuters, which is where sometimes software may go to die. Not to get us distracted, but I know that's something as an industry we feel very passionately about. And to be honest, like I just kept waiting for someone else to solve the problem, like in a better way, and nobody did. And part of my background had been working with technology companies. I was in the Bay Area, so I did like, we did bookkeeping and then CFO services for tech companies. So I was working with a lot of venture-backed tech companies, and I was looking at what they were doing with AI. And there was a moment where I think it was GPT-4, which would have been late 2023, where they presented Chat GPT. This is OpenAI, who's like the largest AI company. And they presented on stage when they launched this new model, the model doing a tax return. And it really caught my attention. One, because I was like, well, my job's over. I guess I'll go look for a job tomorrow morning. And I bought these practices and I still owe money on some of the practices. So this is going to be a wild ride for me. But like it can't actually do tax returns, just to fast forward for you. Like even today with better models, you really don't want to just dump things in and have it complete an entire tax return. And I can bore you guys for a long time with why that is. But we'll skip that today unless anybody wants to stay after for a AI course. Um, but but it got my attention, right? And because I was like, hold on a minute, I'm watching these other tech companies do things in like completely different spaces. And actually one in particular that I worked with very closely was in the chemical space. And they'd take this catalog data, they'd extract all the information, they would supplement it for an e-commerce experience with data like, is it flammable, or like what other chemicals can you ship this with? And the only reason I bring that up is to say that it's actually a lot of the same things that we're doing here. You're extracting data. It has to be super accurate. Like if I tell you something's not going to explode, if you put it with another chemical, it better not explode, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like all the same things that we're doing. We had to have tons of controls in place to make sure that we had accurate outputs. And so I looked at that. I actually grabbed Jack, who's my co-founder, who was the top engineer on our team. And I just said, hey, Jack, like, can you come out to my house for a week and we're just going to look at tax documents and we're going to see if we could do the same thing we're doing here with tax documents. And I don't even want to start a company here unless I can do it with like 99% accuracy. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but there are different types of AI that can do the extraction of data. But fundamentally, like that's what our process, where our process begins, is you pull in the source documents, and I'll just kind of show you guys as we go here. I'm not going to spend I can do a pretty quick kind of like 10-minute end to end here, but feel free to interrupt me with questions. I don't mind an interruption
Yeah.
at all. So break in
And
and
can I just
yeah, go
add,
ahead.
Dave? Sorry, if you guys do have questions, pop them into the chat and I will summarize them and pass them to Dave as we go through.
Yep. So the first time you log in, we map all the clients from your tax software. So there's not like some big intake process. This is not the heavy lift that you'll have with switching practice management software. Just as an example, I switched from Carbon to TaxDome this year, and I switched to Carbon 4 years ago. And I think it was a 12-month process for me, right, in my firm. Not an easy lift. This is something that you could be up and running on within the day. Like within 30 minutes, we have people process their first return on their own. Typically in a demo is our goal. And then there's a few things we do, but it starts with like the preparation of a tax return. That's the core of a practice that does tax. And to me, it was the biggest unsolved problem in this industry. And the reason I say that is because bookkeeping is mostly automated, right? Something like 80 to 90% automated. AP, AR, those things are starting to be automated. But tax is still like this super archaic process where we have people doing work that people should not be doing or do not want to do. And I just say that because I couldn't hire anybody to do it. And I thought to myself, like, why does somebody want this job? Like you're going to work 60 hours a week during tax season. You can never make a mistake. And there's going to be incredible pressure because you're dealing with clients who are in a stressful moment because they don't really know if they're going to owe taxes or get money back, right? And you guys all know that very well. I just say that to highlight the fact that like that was an aha moment for me is I kept trying to hire people and I kept not finding good people. And then I thought to myself, like, why does somebody want this job? Like we need to make this job better. You know what I mean? Like I use ProConnect, which is an okay tool. and all the tax softwares are okay tools, basically, is kind of my summary after seeing all of them this year. But we needed a layer here that was like an intelligence layer that eliminated some of the parts of the job that are really not rewarding. And that would include like typing in numbers off of PDFs, basically, first and foremost. So
Yeah.
long story short, you pick a client, you upload the documents. If you're using TaxDome, one quick thing I'll show you is like, it's actually going to be inside your client documents. You're going to have this like send to tax software button right here, and it will send it to Juno, and it's going to map it to the correct client. So there's actually not that much to show you here. This is actually just a click-through demo because this is not released yet. But effectively, so let me shrink this so you guys can probably see a little bit better. This is the very first time you do it. You'll like log into Juno, and then it automatically will map those clients for you. You get 5 free returns. You have to authorize the sharing of data, right? You're going to sign like our terms and conditions. One quick comment there is happy to talk about this. This is probably a question that should always be asked. We anonymize the data that we send to our AI models that we use. We also are part of the zero data retention program, which means they don't retain or train based on your client data. They don't retain it for more than like 15 to 30 seconds. They do have to cache it for a minute just to process it, but then it's all deleted, and they don't train on that data. We also don't train our systems on your client data. That is a really important question to ask any AI company that you're working with. There are competitors in our space that do train on client data. I think that's like one, unethical, and two, dubious from a legal perspective, just because like you actually, if you haven't asked your clients for permission to train AI models based on their data, my perspective would be, and I think this is consistent with some of the recent changes in how we use data and what we disclose in our WISP and all the different things, you should really be disclosing that. So I actually think this is kind of a violation of like firm ethics, if you're allowing people to train on the data. So the important thing is that being a CPA, like from the very beginning, we designed this in a way to be really compliant with what we're doing. We're completely US based, those types of things. But within TaxDome, you go to your client documents and you can select the documents you want to push into our system. And then it's just going to pop up here. If for some reason they like email you another document, or you have documents in some other system, and I guarantee we could talk about this for an entire hour. Try not to do that if you can avoid
Yeah.
it. It really streamlines your processes to have like a checklist that's customized for the different clients. And if you guys haven't used that yet, you're going to be really excited this year, I think, in terms of what that looks like for your practice. I moved to that 3 years ago. It really streamlines the intake of documents. But then just to skip a couple steps ahead, and I'll pause here for questions in just a minute, because the next two parts are pretty easy. We extract the data, we build a work paper for you, like a binder. We build a tax prep report, which actually will even tell you if we did not extract data from a form, and I'll show you that in just a second, kind of what that looks like. And then we, once it's validated, if we have any questions, we'll force you to review it. And this takes like 2 minutes to validate these forms, by the way. I normally can do this in a live demo. I'd be, if someone really wants to see it, I can do it today. But I think, like 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the form. And that's including like long brokerage statements or K1s. We'll take all of that like raw data entry. So like a 1099, a 1098, K1, brokerage statement. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of other forms, but we take like 50 plus form types and extract the data, and then we're ready to push it into your tax software. And I'll show you just one quick thing here on the validation that's really important. Our system will talk to you in like what we have been able to extract and where we have really high confidence. So if we don't have high confidence, we will force a review. This will say like awaiting review, and you have to pop in here and review the different fields. But if you wanted to, you could still review every field here. And I actually had my admins do this for like a huge part of tax season, just because I just wasn't sure yet how accurate this was, right? And we finally stopped doing it at some point because we just didn't need to. But you can see all the extracted data here. I can go change this data if I wanted to, if something was wrong on the left. I can zoom in on the original source document, things like that. By the way, I'm going to use like Daisy Duck here, which is obviously not a real client of mine. But but you'll probably see like we anonymize and create an anonymized data set, but these are like real documents the way clients submit them. They're not like perfect documents. Let me see if I can find one that's like a good example of this. I have like pictures of things, right, with a thumb in it and things like that. And our system, like if your thumb's covering box 10, it's going to be like, hey, I can't see box 10. What's going on here? And so it's really built for the type of data that you receive. And we've already processed, I don't keep track of the exact number, but like over 100,000 source documents this year very easily. It might even be a lot higher than that. But we have had the ability, again, we don't train on the user, on the client data, but we track user feedback. So if you tell me like I got a number wrong here, our system looks at that and then we improve our systems over time. And we're in the high 99s in terms of accuracy. And if we're not sure about something, we're going to flag it for you. I'll show you one more quick thing here. On a brokerage statement, just because this is the most interesting, you have a couple things here that I wanted to show. One is like, if for some reason there's like a 2023 form in a 2024 tax year, we're going to highlight that for you. If the client name doesn't match, we're going to flag that for you. Like there's intelligence kind of built in here along the way to provide kind of like safety checks or quality checks. The other thing I'll show you, and this gets pushed into our consolidated PDF that we call like the tax preparation report. We will show you like, hey, there's margin interest on this. That's not always deductible. In fact, like on a 1040, it's typically not deductible. But we're going to call that out because we're like, hey, it's on here and we didn't put it in your tax software. And the reason I show this is because these systems need to talk to you. They're going to be doing more and more like human tasks. And I tell people sometimes like, think of this as a human on your team and not a piece of software, because it's going to sometimes ask you questions. Like it's going to pop in your office and be like, hey, I'm not totally sure what to do with this margin interest, things like that. And so it's going to communicate back and forth with you. And there are times where people are like, I just want to be able to like bulk export and just like, I want this thing to automatically process everything, push it into the tax software. Well, here's the problem. Like, even if we were 99.9% accurate, there's a couple hundred points of data on a typical tax return. So you'd have a mistake like on one out of every, whatever that number is, probably for that, one out of every like 5 returns, basically. Right. And so that's not acceptable in this industry. You have to build a better system than that. And so it can't be a black box. Like you'll notice that we're giving you all the information that we extract every single field. You can change every single field. We are improving over time, but we're also communicating with you along the way on like what we've extracted, what we haven't. And we're building this out because you can throw so much compute at this now. Like these AI models are pretty amazing, especially when you break down a problem into smaller sub problems. They perform really, really well. We will use different types of AI to really highlight like any potential issues that we have for the preparer. So, this is effectively like a super preparer, is the way I think about this. But it's meant to like arm the experienced professional with the information that they need. And that's why we built this for accountants and not for consumers, right? Like if this thing really could, like in the presentation I saw, go and do a tax return by itself without ever having to have a real professional look at it, you would have just like, I would just built this for consumers and we just give it to them and have it do their tax returns. AI is amazing. It's not there yet. And I don't know that it's ever going to be. It's actually probably good news for us as a profession. But it can do like the basic data entry. And then our job's going to be more of like around the advisory services and the relationship with clients and making sure that we review the really complex issues on a tax return. And so we're going to be spending less time on data entry, more time on what I call like the more human parts of our job. I'll pause there. So that's
Yeah.
like data extraction and validation. And that's a big chunk of this. I'll pause there in case there's any questions or comments.
Yeah. I have a couple of biggies that I wanted to ask about. The first big one was SOC 2 compliance.
Yeah.
Can you
Yep.
speak to
We're
that?
starting our audit like next week, SOC 2 Type 2. We've been in the readiness preparation for like 6 months. The only reason we don't put that on our website is I don't think SOC ready is like a real thing people should say about software. So we're doing it. It drives me nuts. A couple of our competitors are like, we're SOC ready. And I'm like, that as an accountant, I find that very offensive, right? That's like saying I'm
Not the
audit
same.
ready. It means literally nothing.
Yeah.
But we have been working for months on that, and we are actually like about to start our audit. The plan is to finish that. I mean, they typically take like 4 weeks. So
Yeah.
we were telling everybody like it will be done by the end of the year.
Perfect. So there was a couple of questions about softwares that you integrate with. Currently, you guys integrate with Drake, Lacert, ProConnect, and Ultra.tax.
Yep.
Are there others that are in the pipeline for being released this calendar year, just so people can
Yeah.
kind of think about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Access is coming next. And
Okay.
then Pro Series will have done this year as well.
Okay.
We get so many requests. And I will say for folks, we are always like talking to people. I've been to, 15 tax conferences this summer and probably talked to probably like 500 plus firm owners. We will continue to push on integrations as much as possible. Like when Drake web-based comes out, we still like don't have a copy of that. I hear mixed things. I think it might be out in like beta or something because some people adamantly said they have it. But we're always going to be adding to that list as we
Yeah.
go. But like you said, like Lacert, ProConnect, Drake, UltraTax, Access is next, and then Pro Series after that.
Cool. Yeah, and just so you guys can understand, when it comes to integrating these softwares together, it's like having someone that speaks Chinese talk to someone that speaks French. And you have
Yeah.
to literally translate in between every single little line of code. And that is no small feat. So my hat's off to you guys as software developers
Yeah.
for doing that
It's
translation because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. It's insane. And
Yeah.
it's funny because we joke about it as a profession of like switching and how hard that is. And if you ever
Yeah.
go in any sort of forum, you'll see tons of people talking about that. And now I understand why. Like truly different architecture for how you enter data. I mean, it's like completely bonkers. I could bore you guys with lots of stories about the uniqueness of these different tax softwares.
I bet. There was a question a couple times about file types coming in. And
Yeah,
so Tanishka did share with us PDF, JPEG,
yeah.
JPG, JPEG, PEN, like CSVs, XLs, all of those
Yeah.
are able to be imported.
Yeah, that's right. And you can import like not just the 1099s and things. We also bring in like your organizer and it can be any format. For that, you actually can even bring in like if they sold their primary home and things like that. We're not going to enter that data and we'll tell you what we entered. I'll show you that here in just a minute. It's also on the report that I was mentioning. But what we would prefer for people to do is to bring in like all of the data associated with the tax return. So the only format I've heard people ask about that we don't support is like numbers, which we just, maybe someday we'll add to the list, but not that many folks are working on Max. That's their version of the Excel software.
Yeah.
But tons of other file types, even like HEIC, I think as well, which wasn't on that list, which like is an
Yeah.
iPhone picture.
Yeah. Awesome. 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 There was a question around, does it pull state specific information
It
as well?
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does for all of these forms. The only thing that doesn't do well with on states is brokerage statements, just
Okay.
because I don't know if you guys, I mean, you probably know this because you've dealt with it, but it's pretty exceptional for my practice though. The state information is just reported, like so it's not consistent how they report that on brokerage statements. So it really kind of depends, but we will tell you if there's state information on a brokerage statement that we didn't pull. It'll be right up here in the notes, and then again, it'll be on the PDF. But we do states for W-2s and K-1s and like all the different major forms.
Awesome. And then there was a really smart question. I like this one from Luis. It was, are there ways to train or correct Juno if I notice repeated errors on certain forms?
I okay, so we are training basically in the background. We have like it's very easy for us to do like per firm memory. That's something that these AI models have really improved in the last like 6 months. Our perspective right now is that because this is like the same across different firms, we don't want to be training for individual firms. That
Yeah.
then we'd have to manage like hundreds of individually trained or thousands of individually trained models
Mhm.
in order to do that. So right now, when we see user feedback, we improve the system for everybody. I want to be careful about the word training. So we're not training again like on data, but when we have user feedback, we improve our models. We don't, there are times where we use it to automatically have the model go do more research and come back and update the model on like Advisor, which is a different product I'll show you at the end. But on this model itself, we're not training based on anything, but there isn't the ability to individually train. There are some things you can do that are individual for the firm, and I'll show you that as we go through.
Cool. And one last question I do want to ask is about multiple documents in one file, because that came up
Yeah,
several
yeah,
times.
that works just fine. We
Oh,
parse it all. We know which one's which. Yeah, we'll
And
handle that just fine.
question that got answered for me by someone who had a demo with you guys recently was that when you upload all this stuff, the output is put out in a consistent format. So it's like all the W-2s are together, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a
Yep.
standardized format that they come out in.
Yeah. If I do this like bookmark PDF, it will be. There's a table of contents here. I'm on a Mac, so it looks a little bit different than it might on a PC. But regardless, the important thing is we structure it based on the form, and it's in the order of the tax return. This is something SurePrep's done for a long time. So it's all organized here. And one thing that's really, really going to be fun in the next like 6 weeks or so, we're going to have this before tax season. We're going to start annotating this in detail, and I'm very, very excited about. I kind of nerd out on work papers. We do organize it. It's the quick answer to that question. But one thing I want to kind of tease with, and this is where it's going to get really fun for us as professionals, is our system, because like you can use unlimited compute power and computers are like, I could ask it to do something I would literally never ask a human to do because it would take them hours and hours and hours. But for a computer, like we can just use insane amounts of compute to do this. We're going to start annotating this with like where we extract the data. Like we'll highlight this form for every field that had extracted data in it. And we'll also tell you like where we put that data. And I'll kind of show you that as we go through, but that more and more of that's going to flow into this PDF, which is really exciting for me because a lot of reviewers don't want to go back to, may not want to go into Juno, just as an example, right? So I kind of told our team, like, this needs to be a standalone document where you could review the whole return from this PDF. So more to come here.
I like that. Guys, there's a ton of amazing questions, and I wish we could continue answering
Yeah.
all of the small detailed ones. But I am going to move us forward because I would love to hear Jessica's perspective just on this piece alone right now. So Jess, how are you thinking about this from the practitioner's perspective around the validation of the information that's coming in and what that will do for you this year?
So really for me, I mean, I run a very lean team. I think I've pointed that out on a handful of occasions. And part of that means that I'm the only like licensed qualified tax practitioner in the practice. So a lot of the review process, a lot of the like confirming where the information has to go in is either done by me or it has to be done by admin staff who has to be trained on like all of the places where it might go. And the error rate for a staff, I wouldn't even say a staff accountant because I don't really have anyone on my team who's a staff accountant level, but at the admin level that I'm at, that they're at, it is more time consuming if I have a return that's just a little bit more difficult than simple for them to help with the data entry. And so what I've experienced with testing Juno is I have fewer things that I have to move to spots that I would normally put on a tax return, which I think is super helpful. Looking forward to what I think this might benefit me in the long run is, I did a demo just yesterday with Grant, David's business partner, and I already can see some of the things that I can give to my admin staff can be really delegated to them with a significantly reduced error rate on like where the documents are, how the documents are organized, where the information gets input. Because again, the computer knows more about like, oh, covered versus non-covered, or, a W-2, making sure that it's identified like tax and spouse, right? Because there's always little corrections that will eat up your time when you're doing the review process. And that's where I'm trying to minimize the commitment on my end. So that's what I'm really looking forward to is taking what normally has been a manual process, even with some computer help, but still having to make those like minor little adjustments just from lack of, again, they're not practitioners. My admin staff are not practitioners. They don't want to do tax prep, but they're happy to facilitate the software getting the information into the return.
Yeah, awesome. Love that.
Jamie, one quick thing I'll say on that, and Jess, it's a really good point that I just want to highlight for this group. It's difficult to generalize because every practice is very different. But one thing you said is really important. It has been important for my practice in terms of unlocking productivity, which is that my admins do the part that I'm showing you right now. So I have two admins, one's full-time, one's part-time. They actually do this. And the only thing I had to train them on, because like this is super rote, right? It's like, hey, what's in box one? Like, I need you to double check this. It is so like any person can do it, not just a tax professional. The mapping to the tax software is already done. So like my admins don't have to worry about that, which is one thing you mentioned. But the other thing I was going to call out is that, if you guys do have admins, particularly during tax season, they're like doing a bunch of 5-minute things, and this takes like 5 minutes, right? And so it's really helpful to have someone who's used to doing like these short tasks throughout the day, because a phone call might come in at any time, going ahead and doing all of this, as opposed to a tax preparer. Right. And so that's like a small little insight. But the one thing I would say is like people are leveling up. And Jess, you mentioned this too, like you selecting taxpayer versus spouse, is like not the level that you should be playing at, right? And so this allows people to play at the level that they should. For my practice, what that means is my admins are actually doing this part of it. They export it, and when a tax preparer picks it up, they just finished like the really complex parts of the return, and they already have a work paper created, right, with an annotated PDF. And they've got a report on like what downloaded or what exported into the software. So it's like an interesting nuance. But one thing as you start to think about automation, that will become more and more important in these firms.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. So we've seen the document upload. Now let's talk
Yep.
about the next step.
Okay, so I'll go quickly through the next couple steps. This one's very simple. So when I export into tax software, so I'm done now and I can proceed, and it just tells me like, okay, you're ready to export. So I export into the tax software. I pull up a desktop app. This works on a PC or a Mac. I'm going to show you on ProConnect because that's what I have on this computer, but it works the same way if it's Drake or UltraTax. It's like very, very similar, with the exception of like I'm going to use a browser basically when I do this. But all I do is go in here again, like this list is already created. You can see the statuses. I just select a client and I can hit export. I can skip the documents if I want to for some reason. Like, I don't know, if I have Schedule C and I don't even know why you would really do this, to be honest with you. But if you just were like, I want to put in the data manually here on this one, I can skip it. And if I've already exported the document previously, it's going to automatically skip it. Right. That's important just because, not all the documents come in at once. So if you've already exported 8 of the 10 documents and 2 more come in, like automatically it's going to catch that. So you don't end up with chaos on the return. And then you hit export. What's going to happen is it's going to pop up your tax software. In this case, it's going to be a new browser window for ProConnect because ProConnect is browser based. And I'm going to select, I'm just going to log back in. With ProConnect, I do have to log in. With the other software, you don't actually have to log in. And that's just the hardest part is remembering what my password is for ProConnect, to be honest with you, most of the time. As you guys know, with QuickBooks, I keep telling it to remember my computer and it never does. So again, this is like a test database. So I just got a couple of clients in here, but you select the client and then it's going to start entering the data automatically, right? Like you can see my hands. It's just, this is real. It's going through and it enters something like 100 fields of data per minute. So a typical tax return takes like 2 minutes basically to do this. So again, like this stuff isn't like milliseconds, but you're not sitting here for an extended period of time. And I can minimize this window and go do something else, right? So I can come back in here and go to email or something like that. While that's happening. The only thing you can't do is like if you're using Drake as an example, like I can't go into Drake and like work on a different client, right? I have to be like in a different program if I'm doing that. And ProConnect actually could, because I can just open another browser tab and be working in 2 at once. But again, that just kind of depends on the actual tax software. But the export itself is super fast. Again, like my admins do this for the initial export. So that my tax preparers, when they start, are just like further down the road. And there was very little training there. I had to train them on brokerage statements, and I had to train them on the taxpayer versus spouse thing that they need to look out for. We actually asked them, where we need that information, we asked them to do it. And what was the other thing? I trained them on one other. Oh, on like Schedule C's and E's, basically just to look out for like depreciation or home office or auto, like things that we might be calculating in our tax software. So that if somebody did include that in their list of expenses, they would know to like skip it or make a note about that.
Cool. Can I
And
ask
that's
one
export.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
There was one question that's come up a couple times for people that are using hosted solutions that are
Mhm.
on like Rightwork or other cloud-based solutions. Not
Yeah, we work.
cloud-based servers, I should say. So like
Yeah,
remote desktops.
yeah. Yeah, we
And
work with Rightworks. We're an approved app. With the other ones, like Barito is one that we've worked with quite a
yeah,
bit. I think that's popular in the TaxDome community. Like one
yeah.
quick note I will make is like I think Barito has a very nice product. Rightworks can be a little bit of a pain. Like for example, when we push an update to them, it can take like many days for them to make it available. And then when you request it, the way this works, and it's wonky, but I promise I have zero control over this. I've complained as much as I possibly can about this. We did become an approved app, and that was like 6 months ago or something. That was a long time ago. What happens here is you have to request access to that app. Just like you do with any app in the cloud, because they're controlling what you install on that virtual desktop.
Yeah.
But we work with Rightworks or Verito or any third-party hosted service that I found so far. We also work with hosted, like Ultra.tax, for example, like can be hosted with Thomson Reuters in that case as well. We work with those hosted and locally installed applications. So we can work in really any environment. You do see, and this is part of why we have like an onboarding with folks, sometimes depending on what you've got running on your computer, like if you have certain antivirus software, we just have to make it an approved app. So we'll typically sit there for 30 minutes while your team installs everything, just to make sure you don't have any hiccups in the process. The one thing to know is if you're using Rightworks in particular, you just have to, request that in advance. And sometimes it can take a few days for them to approve that request.
So pretty much it's the same. If you're using TaxDome, it's the same process you went through to get TaxDome or any other software that you
Yeah,
use,
that's
right?
exactly right. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. You're exactly right. If you did it for TaxDome, then you did the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. All right. What do you have next for us?
Okay, I've got two more steps or two more pieces of the product I'll show you guys, and these are both pretty quick. This is my very favorite part of this product. It is a little bit futuristic, but stick with me. This is I think going to be really fun and kind of change our profession. Let me go to one that has a review done here. So I'm going to show you what happens next is you go finish your return, right? So let's say in the organizer, someone said they got married that year, they had a child, they have an EV credit, and they sold their primary home. Just like making things up here that we would not put into your tax software. You're going to go in and change their filing status, add a dependent. You're going to go do the sale of the primary residence if they had a gain, obviously, and kind of do the work to finish the return. And then what happens next is really cool. So you can pull that return back in here. So you're going to print it, you're going to bring it back in here. Or if you want to, and I don't know exactly how this is going to work yet, but you could print it to TaxDome, right, with like the print driver that they've got, and then you could push it back in here as well. I kind of feel like it's easier just to print it and pull it back in here. And if you do have a preparer reviewer model, the preparer is the one that should do this. And I'll explain why in just a minute. And then we use AI to aid the review of the return. So we're not just preparing the return or doing the data entry for the return. We're also going to start to help you in review. And I love this because I think Jess was saying this earlier, especially if you're like an individual person who's doing this, like you've got no backup. And I know it keeps me awake during tax season, worrying about like what mistake I might have made or what I might have missed on a return. And I'm sure it does, particularly if you're doing your own returns. And there's not like, at least I can somewhat assume that I kind of know the types of mistakes my staff makes after many years of working with them. So I know where to look. But there's just a lot of blind spots, right? Like at the end of the day, let's just admit it. Like a human cannot properly review a really long tax return when there are thousands of points of data and half of the things on the PDF are like a sum of other fields that come from some different page. And by the way, they don't match last year's because the forms change every year. So like even if I'm looking at the PDF this year versus last year, like all the things we do to predict errors are not always sufficient. Like mistakes are going to happen. And so what we're trying to do here is provide additional assurance using AI, and AI is really good at being able to check a task list of like 1,000 little things. So there's a couple ways we do this. The first is like a source document comparison with what's on the tax return. So you can see here that it's highlighting like exceptional items that are meant for review. And it doesn't mean there's a mistake. It just means there's something unusual happening. So this first one's like a 1099B, and it's saying like, hey, the net capital gain doesn't match here. there could be
Mm.
legitimate reasons for that. Like maybe I've chosen to use a different kind of like basis valuation method. Like I don't know, something was reported with no basis, then it's not going to match. Or if something was reported with basis, but I chose a different basis method, it's not going to match. So this could be like perfectly legitimate, but it's just flagging this for you that like, hey, there's something weird going on here. You should check this out. Similarly, on these other forms, you know, if the things match, like interest is adding up to all the 1099 INTs that you have, then you're going to see like no exceptions, basically. But if you do have exceptions, it's going to show it here. And I'll give you one. Let's see here. This is a good one, I think, where the PDF is showing a mismatch with the 1040, where the Schedule A deductible interest is lower than the total interest on the 1098, and that would be very common, right? Because there can be a limitation based on like the maximum allowable amount of the size of the mortgage, right? Which is very, very common, the 750K if it's after 2017 or whatever it is. But this actually, if it has the data to do so, it will say like this doesn't match, but the limitation has been applied correctly. Sometimes if it doesn't know the total value of the mortgage, it can't do that. So in this case, I assume that's what's happening here. And it's just saying like, hey, look, it says 24,000 on the 1098 and the return says 20,000. That's probably not a mistake, but I do want to like quickly go double check that. And it allows me to basically not have to go back to the source documents is what we're really trying to achieve here, because we're using different agents that are trained on the individual source documents to make sure they're entered correctly in the 1040. So like, I know this gets a little technical, but we use OCR plus foundational models up front to extract the data. Then we use agents on the back end to make sure that they were correctly entered and presented on the 1040. So it's like 3 different AI approaches to prevent errors. But this one I find really to be exciting for me because I typically spend most of my time reviewing returns. And I've always wanted an easier way to do that. I think that looking at like 2 side-by-side 100-page returns is kind of an insane way to try to prevent errors. It's just not designed to present the information in the right way. So the first step is the source to return. The second is what we call the gotcha checks, which are like, I took my reviewer checklist and literally just dumped it in here and built an agent for every single one. This is one where very soon, like in the next few weeks, you're going to be able to upload your own checklist if you want to do that, and it will automatically build agents for that. So someone asked about training particular models. This is an area where you could customize what you're doing here, which is super exciting for me, because I think firms always have like different things that they want to check, and why not be able to do that automatically, right? And again, like my preparers use this first, so they do better self-review. Because they really don't always know where they should be looking. A reviewer oftentimes, like I've had people say like, well, I don't need this. I've been doing it for 20 years. And that's probably like true for many people. Like maybe they don't want to switch how they do things. I use this to support my review, and I still do certain things in review. Like I do go through the actual 1040s just because I honestly don't know. I probably don't need to, but it's just like I can't sleep at night if I don't do that. I've just been doing that long enough. But what I don't do anymore is go back to the original source documents unless it's a brokerage statement with no basis or a K1. I do look at all the K1s just because of the footnotes. We do take actually some of the data from the footnotes in the K1s, but sometimes there's stuff in there that we don't pull. We'll tell you we didn't pull it, but I still go back to a K1 just to take a quick look at that and make sure there's not some sort of weird information in the footnotes. And then a couple other things here. There's a year-over-year comparison. That's like a better version of what your tax software does because you're looking for errors sometimes, right? And year-over-year, there's a year-over-year document comparison. And then there's an organizer checklist. And I think I have this one pulled up for Ben, where it takes the organizer itself. This could be any organizer. It could be TaxDome. It could be any format, Sorban or Stanford Tax or something like that. We could take anything, and it takes like their answers. So this, I just love this piece of it. Is so cool. We don't put this data in the return, but we can check it because it's unstructured data. So someone could just say like, I had a kid this year. Well, like, do we know 100% what that means? Like, did they have them this year or the prior year? Like when, and what I mean by that is like, people will say to me sometimes like, I got married in January and I know that they filled this out in February, and so I'm probably going to ask them like, which January do you mean? But like an AI system is just going to take that and automatically do it. So I don't want to cause errors with what we're putting into the tax software. So instead, what we do with this information that's higher risk, like the organizer, And it's higher risk because it's not a tax document that's box 10 goes over here in the tax return, right? So it's unstructured. What we do instead of putting the data in is we actually just review it. So we'll look and see, like, did they say they had a child? Do they have an extra dependent this year? Did they say they have an EV credit? Is it presented on the 1040? And then we'll give you basically like feedback on what's here. And so we'll say like, oh, we found all these things, right? They have charitable contributions. We found charitable contributions. We actually matched the amount that they said on the organizer, and that matches. Again, like there are reasons why it might or might not match, but this tells you where to look. And what we're trying to do here also is pull, so you're not scrambling and going to like 20 different places, but you're actually having your reviews centralized in one place. And I'll show you one
This
other
is,
little, oh, sorry, go
yeah, I
ahead.
was just
Yeah,
gonna
we can
say,
stop there.
Jessica told me about this yesterday.
Yeah,
Like this is a game changer for you
yeah,
not having to do the crosswalk around. So John
yeah,
asked the question, what about the TaxDome organizer? You would just print it off as a PDF once the client has
yeah,
completed it and you've done your document reviews, right? Like,
that's right.
so
Yeah,
anybody that's in our program, we're going to walk you through exactly how to set all this up operationally and make sure that you're able to integrate it as quickly as possible into your workflows this fall and get things rolling, because this is going to be hugely beneficial being
yeah.
able to pull this organizer in. So,
I'm just so excited. This is my favorite part of the product, honestly, by far. Like, I think this will change the whole industry.
yeah.
And I think we'll be copied very soon on this, which is probably great for the industry, to
Yeah.
be honest with you, because everyone should be doing this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So what else you got?
Okay, just one last quick little thing. We have a research assistant, which is effectively ChatGPT, right? There's some other security stuff built in here, and we use a RAG, so it gives you like a little bit better results that are formatted. If you guys are using GPT, that's totally fine. Just make sure you're using the paid version so you don't accidentally have people sharing client data. But this is just included with the tax practice for us. It'll draft emails, it does tax law research, it does like advisory work. But then what we have that I think is worth showing you in a little more detail is what we call advisor. This is so far ahead that I just do it at the very end as like a teaser of what is to come, because I think it's pretty far ahead of our industry. And I know, and I'll just say this from my practice, we have struggled to get into the advisory work, right? And get out of just compliance work, where you can add more value and work with people year round and do all the things that I'm sure you guys have heard 100 podcasts about. But most firms still aren't really doing that at scale. And so one of the things that we are working on now is like, okay, we have all this data about all these clients. How do we like really prompt people to do more advisory work? And so we have a product we call Advisor, and we have all these agents that we pre-built, and you basically select a client. So I can select Daffy Duck as an example, and then I can actually run through like a prompt library, and I can say, hey, for Daffy Duck, like run me through like when she would hit the next tax bracket, or run me through if she bought a rental property, how that might impact her return next year, or run me through like her top retirement contribution strategies, or just overall give me like a deep dive on her tax return, things like that. And I'll show you what this looks like. I'm just going to show you in history because these do take like 3 or 4 minutes. It's looking through like thousands of variables, and actually we've trained like a few thousand agents for this. But I'll show you what I did yesterday just for fun. So I was like, hey, I want to look at like reasonable compensation for an S corp for Daisy Duck. And then it kind of asked me follow-up questions. It was like, okay, well, tell me about Daisy Duck. If she had a Schedule C, it would have done this automatically. We just didn't have a Schedule C on this return. But instead, it's like, okay, what does she do? How much profit do they have? Like, what industry are they in? That kind of thing. And then it goes through in details, like all the analysis that it's running, and it will give me an assessment of like what reasonable compensation should be and what the tax impact is on her return of an S corp, in this case. And it knows, like if it's comparing to a Schedule C, it knows to consider QBI, to calculate like payroll taxes, should be compared to self-employment taxes. Like it is built for an accountant, and it knows a whole bunch of things to make these accurate. And this is an area where we do, when we get user feedback that like, I don't think that's right, can you think about this? It will go do more research and automatically self-learn. But this is just like super powerful. And I'll give you a quick, like a few quick dumb examples of how I use it. If I'm on a phone with a client, I'm taking notes here. so that I can send them a really detailed feedback from the call, because they're never going to remember what I tell them, honestly. It's like, if they started an S Corp, I have 20 things they need to remember, and they're not going to remember 19 of them. So I like to send it afterwards, and I charge more for that. Have had zero complaints, by the way, and I've been doing that for over a year now. I just charge for like an hour. Basically, we do fixed rate pricing, so it's like 100 and well, sorry, mine is 285. But I'll charge them a couple $100 basically for this follow-up. And I actually, like, again, have had zero people complain about it. It's a nice way to get you into the advisory services, but it's also little things like people email and be like, how much should I withhold? I'm starting to get Social Security this year, or like I'm taking a, RMD of this amount. And this will do it automatically. It gives you a nice little short report. It tells you all of the assumptions that it's using, so you can see like the math. And again, like, it makes it transparent. If you go into GPT or some other models, they can do this. You just have to describe the client in detail. If you want to like manually anonymize that data, you could do that. What I will say is, like, ours will be more accurate because of the architecture that we use. Like, we use agents to break these problems up into smaller sub problems, and that's how you get the best results from the current AI models. So again, like, this is so far ahead. I just want to tease it out there for you guys, but it's out there today. You can try it in a free trial, and it's ready to rock, and it's really powerful. I think the industry isn't totally there yet, and myself included. But as we get into more of an advisor flow and your time gets freed up from data entry to do other things, this is where we should be spending our time, and this will be a really powerful tool for that.
Awesome. Dave, this has been great. Jessica, I know we're down to just a couple minutes. If I would love to get a 2-minute debrief from Jessica, and then I want to talk, everybody wants to know what the cost is, Dave. So
Yep.
I want to talk about how people can like explore this, get the free trial in just a second. But Jessica, I want you, before we go to talk about the price, how are you seeing the value of what this brings to the cost that you for your returns and the benefit to you and your practice as a whole?
So I know you and I were talking about this briefly, and for me, I always am looking at the time that I expect to save over the course of like the season, however you guys want to measure like what the time is necessary to finalize all the returns on your desk. Even on like the low side, I was looking at like maybe 100 hours would potentially be saved.
It's a lot.
Just from, yeah, it is a lot. And that's kind of even like on the low side. So for me, if I'm turning that 100 hours into like time that I could potentially bill and get new clients, I mean, I think we quantified the savings. It was like over 80,000, almost $90,000
Yeah.
that I would be saving for the investment of that product. But that's how I measure it.
Yeah.
It made perfect sense to me. I mean, because I could easily take on, and while this is not a desire of mine, I could double the number of returns I prepare in a year easily without having to hire someone who is already a trained, seasoned tax practitioner.
Yeah. Just a little bit more administrative support to help with customer management, and you could do so much more.
And the way the software functions, like knowing the skill set of my virtual assistant, she's amazing. It's a very easy to use tool. So we're not having to complicate, it's not like I'm having to explain to my virtual assistant, I need you to take all of this data and I need you to know on every form that all of these things all belong, right? Like the computer handles that, which means that her time is best spent getting the documents to where they need to go, making sure that all the supporting like work papers are properly formatted and backed up, because that's a huge admin burden. Like we have to have proper files, so if something happens down the line that we can see what we input. But being able to really keep her like really, really laser focused on what normally would have been a very manual process. It's just, for me, that's going to be a huge deal, because there's always that double checking of the work that has to be done.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's an important context. So Dave, can you share with us what the pricing structure is? Yeah,
Yep.
he's got it listed. I'm also
I just put it out there.
add to the chat a free 7-day trial if you guys want to get in and experiment. I think you said, Dave, they get 3 free
Yeah, 5.
returns. Oh, 5. Okay. 5
Yep.
free returns.
And
So
if people
if,
want more, just email me. We
yeah,
can put more. It's not about the number of returns. We want people to be able to like run through and really feel good about the product.
yeah.
And again, it starts at 4K, then it's like $30 per return over that. We've had tons of feedback on the minimum, and we will like really watch that. I want small firms to be able to use this. And as Jessica said, like as software does more human things, it's going to save you more time and money than it has in the past, but it's also likely to cost more. Like we run an insane amount of compute on every return to do this. So our cost structure is very different than, like I give you one silly example, which is like OpenAI has a PhD level research assistant. They charge like $20,000 a month for like one employee, basically. So like the cost of software is just going to be a different it's going to be a different paradigm going forward as it does more human work. But I just want to say out loud that like that's a big check for a small firm, and I get that. Like I have lived that life, and so we're going to continue to like monitor that. The one reason we've got that floor where it is because we have a desktop application that integrates with like Rightworks and like a million different hosting environments. So for us, there is like a minimum threshold to provide really good customer support. And right now we think that's about the right spot for it. We've had a lot of demand in the last few months. Yeah, I did say $4,000, and that includes 100 returns for the $4,000, and it includes advisor as well as reviewer right now. So everything that you saw today is included there, as well as like an unlimited amount of seats, as well as like someone uploaded 100K ones the other day for a client, and I like literally kind of had to scratch my head about that one, that there even would be a client with 100K ones. I have some very high income folks that they don't have 100K ones, but like there's no extra charges basically, right? We wanted to keep it simple for folks, but I will say out loud, it's our first kind of like big sell-in season. And
Yeah.
so we're just figuring this out. Like, don't, I just want you all to know, like, we think about this day and night. So feedback is great. We're working on that. It is a significant cost for folks. If you were buying like 1,000 returns, it gets lower and lower, basically, right? It'd be in the high 20s at that point. And I will say just out loud, like filed Solomon tax file, Soroban, like, Gruntworks is the only competitor that's priced below us, and they don't do probably 80 or 90% of what we do. We do just handle 1040s right now. The business returns you can use in Advisor, and actually it's really good for business returns, as well as trusts, as well as partnerships. We will work on that this tax season. And so by May, I would expect we'll launch businesses and partnerships, maybe trusts, depending on how much our team can get done. But right now, just 1040s for the data entry.
That's awesome. I did want to add too, because there was some people like, what if I only do 75 returns?
Yeah.
Tanishka did share that it does carry over. So the credits, if you
Yeah.
don't use all of them this tax season, they're good through December 2026. So
Yep.
you can use them.
And we're not looking to like have people, the only reason they expire is for revenue recognition, just to be clear. Like just can't have them like never expire. We'd end up with a huge liability of, like millions and millions of dollars there. So they do expire. What we're doing with people right now is like, if for some reason you have extras next year, we'll flip them to business returns or something. And so we're just telling people that if you have questions about that, we will put that in like the T's and C's. So I just want to say out loud that like we're not trying to take advantage of anyone or make that high cost. We really do have a lot of empathy for the cost of software. It's a big deal for folks, and so we want to be open to that. But at the same time, we're trying to build a business, and we do spend 100% of our revenue on development at this point. So it's all going back to our engineering team to make the product better as we go.
Yeah. So awesome. So summary. I dropped the free trial link, guys. If you want to go get a free trial and then check out a demo with them. Do you guys do demos, Dave?
Yeah, of course. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
You can sign up on our website, Juno.tax.
Yeah. So get the free trial, sign up for a demo, get in, play with it, use it for your extension clients that you're processing right now. Actually experience it with a real client and get your fingers in it now. I also added, if you're somebody that's like, I want to get the free trial, but I want to wait until the TaxDome integration is available. The TaxDome integration, from my understanding, is beta at the end of September-ish. And
Yep.
then once it's out of beta, it will roll out general, probably late November, December. So it will be a fast turnaround on the integration within TaxDome, but it is so simple within TaxDome, as you showed earlier, Dave. I think it's click a
Yeah,
button,
it's kind of
right?
just one
So
button.
the rest of your workflow does not change beyond how you're preparing the return in Juno. So get the demo now and start experiencing it so that you can actually integrate this into your workflow next year. You can buy the licenses now if you want, so you can use it with a couple of your extension clients and or more of your extension clients if you really want, and start thinking about how this can transform the way you're working. I did have one question I wanted to clarify. It was asked again. It is currently only for individual clients or individual returns, 1040s. They are working on development of trusts possibly and other business returns in the future, but it is only individual at this point. Another question, are there discounts for over 100? Yes. Get the free trial, sign up for a demo, ask all your specific questions about your practice. They will be able to give you pricing for over that. The starting price is $4,000 for 100 returns. And let's see, there was one other one that I wanted to ask. I'm sorry, guys, there's so many questions in here. Installment payments one time. Yeah, all the pricing, all the questions are on that.
We do spread out the payments, by the way, guys. There's some of it, I think right now, typically like a quarter of it's due now, and then 3/4 is due in January, just like SurePrep has done in the past. So you don't need to pay it all now. We can be flexible on that. And then if you've got other questions like Juno.tax, you can go submit questions, and you'll be kind of guided everywhere you need to go on the site.
Dave, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, your energy that you put into this, and we're really excited about what this can do for the small practice. I know you all have a lot of questions, so demo, sign up for the free trial, get the demo. I'm dropping the free trial link one more time if you haven't gotten it. I will send the replay of this if you guys want to go back and watch it with team members or, chew through it again. It'll be great. And yeah, super excited for you guys. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a great turnout. I love it. So, well, thanks, guys. Look at all those claps and hearts. I appreciate that. We'll see you all again soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.